The morning sun rose slowly above the wide plains, painting the land with soft gold. The cowboy named Luke Carson rode his horse along the dry trail, the leather saddle creaking gently under him. He had been riding since dawn, searching for strayed cattle that had wandered away from his ranch during the night storm. Luke was a quiet man, someone who rarely wasted words. He believed in working with his hands, living with honesty, and helping anyone who needed help. People in the nearby town often said he had the steady heart of an oak tree, silent, strong, and reliable. As he rode deeper into the hills, he noticed the silence around him. No birds sang, and no animals moved. Even the wind held its breath. It was the kind of silence that made a man look over his shoulder. Luke slowed his horse and listened carefully. Then, he heard something faint, like the soft cry of someone in pain. It didn't sound far away. Luke tightened his grip on the reins and guided his horse toward the sound. The trail narrowed into a small valley filled with sharp rocks and fallen branches. The sound came again, clearer this time. It was a woman's voice, weak and frightened. Luke hurried forward, but the horse could not enter the tight space, so he dismounted and tied the reins to a nearby tree. He pushed past the rocks until he reached a small clearing hidden between tall boulders. There, sitting against the stone wall, was an Apache woman. She looked young, maybe in her 20s, and her clothes were torn and dusty. One of her feet was trapped under a fallen log, and her breathing came in uneven gasps. Luke paused for a moment, surprised to find anyone here. The Apache rarely came near ranchers' land, and when they did, it was either for trading or moving through quickly. But this woman was clearly hurt and alone. Her long black hair fell over her shoulders, and her hands trembled from exhaustion. She tried to move her foot again, but the pain made her cry out softly. Luke stepped closer, speaking gently so he wouldn't frighten her. He told her he meant no harm and only wanted to help. The woman looked up at him with wary eyes, not sure if she should trust a stranger. The world had not been kind to her people. She had every reason to doubt him. But she was hurt, and she had no strength left to fight or run. Luke knelt beside her and examined the fallen log. It was heavy, but not impossible to move. He told her he would lift it, and she should pull her foot out as soon as she could. She nodded slowly, still unsure but willing to trust him for this moment. Luke took a deep breath, set his boots firmly, and wrapped his hands around the log. He strained with all his strength, pushing it upward. His muscles tightened, and sweat rolled down his face. After a long moment, he managed to lift the log just high enough. The woman pulled her foot free, wincing from the pain. Luke gently lowered the log back to the ground and stepped away to catch his breath. He asked her if anything else hurt, and she told him her ankle was swollen. She could not walk. Luke looked around. They were too far from town, and the sun was rising fast. If he left her here, she would not survive the heat of the day, nor could she defend herself if wild animals came near. He told her he needed to carry her out of the rocky valley. She hesitated again, not used to being close to strangers, but she also saw the sincerity in his eyes. He was not a man who hid lies in his voice. At last, she nodded. Luke lifted her carefully into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but he could feel her trembling. The moment she rested against him, she felt the steady rhythm of his breath, and something inside her relaxed for a moment. When they reached the horse, Luke helped her settle in front of him on the saddle. He mounted behind her, supporting her carefully so she would not fall. The woman felt uneasy sitting so close to him, but she told herself that she had to accept help. Sometimes, life did not give choices. Sometimes, survival depended on trusting someone new. For now, she accepted that truth. Luke guided the horse toward the open plains, keeping his pace slow so her injured foot would not be jostled too much. After a few minutes, He asked her name. She hesitated, then softly said, Naira. It was a beautiful name, one that fit her calm but strong presence. Luke introduced himself simply as Luke Carson, a rancher who lived not far from here. When he explained how he found her, Naira looked down, embarrassed that a stranger had come to her rescue. She had always been taught to be strong, to take care of herself, to rely on no one outside her tribe. But the accident had left her helpless, and she could not pretend otherwise. As they rode, Luke noticed signs in the dirt tracks of more than one horse, and the patterns showed the riders were traveling fast. Naira saw the tracks too, and tensed up. Luke asked her gently if she was in danger. She said nothing at first, staring at the horizon. Finally, she whispered that a group of men had chased her. She didn't know who they were. She had been gathering herbs near the valley when the men approached, shouting for her to stop. She ran, hoping to lose them in the rocks. That was when she slipped and got trapped under the log. Luke felt a cold anger rising inside him. Someone had hunted this woman, as if she were an animal. He promised her that she was safe with him now. The calm tone of his voice and the determination in his eyes made Naira believe him, even though she had known him for only a short time. Luke decided to take her to his ranch instead of the town. Townsfolk were often suspicious of Apache people, and he didn't want her to face fear or judgment while she was injured. His ranch was far safer, and he could protect her there. Naira didn't argue. She was too tired, too sore, and too worried about the men who had chased her. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to trust someone outside her tribe. The journey to the ranch took nearly an hour. Naira leaned slightly against Luke as the pain in her ankle grew sharper. Luke adjusted his arm around her so she could rest more comfortably. He spoke softly now and then, letting her know how close they were and reminding her that she was safe. She didn't answer much, but she listened to his every word, feeling a strange sense of calm she hadn't felt in days. When they reached the ranch, Luke carried her inside his small but warm cabin. He placed her gently on a bed, making sure her injured foot was supported. He brought clean water, soft cloth, and herbs to soothe the swelling. Naira watched him quietly, surprised by how kind he was. She had met kind men before, but few as gentle as Luke. As he tended to her injury, Luke asked more about the men who had chased her. Naira told him she didn't know their faces, only their angry voices. Luke assured her that no one would harm her under his roof. His voice was calm but firm, carrying the weight of someone who meant what he said. As the evening settled in, the air grew cooler, and the light softened. Naira felt her fears slowly ease away. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing: she was safe tonight. She accepted that Luke had saved her life. She accepted that she needed help. And deep inside, she accepted that this cowboy, who had appeared from nowhere, had changed the path of her day, and maybe her future. Luke sat nearby, keeping watch. He promised himself quietly that he would protect this woman, no matter what trouble followed her. And though Naira didn't say it aloud, she felt a small spark of trust begin to grow, a trust she never expected to give to anyone outside her own people. She accepted the truth that her life had changed today, and Luke, steady, calm, and strong, was now part of that change. The night passed quietly at Luke's ranch, but neither Luke nor Naira slept deeply. Luke stayed awake longer than usual, checking the windows and listening for any unusual sounds outside. He had faced danger many times, but tonight felt different. He was not protecting cattle or land. He was protecting a woman who had already suffered enough. Something inside him refused to let his guard down while she was under his roof. Naira lay in the small bed, her ankle wrapped with cloth soaked in cool herbs. The pain had lessened, but her mind kept returning to the moment when the strange riders chased her. She had been alone, unarmed, and her village was far away. If Luke had not found her when he did, she didn't know what would have happened. The memory made her heart tighten, but then she remembered Luke's promise. He had spoken with such calm strength that she found herself believing him more than she expected. When dawn finally arrived, Luke stepped outside to check the animals. The cool air smelled of earth and fresh grass. His horse neighed softly, and the cattle moved lazily inside the corral. Everything looked normal, but Luke noticed tracks near the far fence. They were faint, but fresh hoof marks of 2 or maybe 3 horses. Someone had passed close to the ranch during the night. Luke's jaw tightened. Whoever they were searching for something or someone. He returned to the cabin quietly, not wanting to alarm Naira, but she was already awake. She sat on the edge of the bed, her long hair falling like a dark river over her shoulders. She looked tired, but calmer than yesterday. Luke asked how she felt. Naira said the pain was still there, but she could move her leg a little. When she tried to stand, her ankle gave out, and she grabbed the edge of the bed for support. Luke stepped forward quickly and helped her sit again. He told her she should not walk for at least a day or 2. She nodded, though frustration flickered in her eyes. She did not like feeling weak or dependent. Her people valued strength, and she feared that relying on a stranger might bring shame. But then she saw the kindness in Luke's expression, and some of that fear melted away. Luke cooked a simple breakfast: eggs, bread, and warm milk. Naira watched him move around the small kitchen with calm confidence. She had never been inside a white man's home before, and everything felt strange but not frightening. She thanked him softly when he placed a plate before her. Luke replied with a gentle smile, saying she didn't owe him thanks for something as simple as sharing food. After breakfast, Luke told her about the tracks he found near the fence. Naira's eyes narrowed with concern. She said the men who chased her had horses, 3 of them. Luke said he suspected the same riders had come close to the ranch during the night. Naira tightened her shawl around her shoulders. She asked why they would still be searching for her when they didn't even know her name. Luke said some men didn't need a reason to hurt others. Sometimes hate, greed, or cruelty was enough. Naira felt a chill run through her. But Luke's calm voice steadied her. He said they would be careful, and she would not be alone. He would protect her, no matter who came looking. As the morning went on, Luke needed to tend to chores. He didn't want to leave Naira alone inside the cabin, so he offered to bring a chair outside so she could sit in the sunlight while he worked. She agreed, grateful to breathe the fresh air and feel the warmth on her face. Luke carried her gently, making sure he didn't hurt her ankle. He set the chair near the corral, where she could see everything happening around the ranch. Naira watched him work. He moved with quiet strength, fixing a loose fence board, checking the hay storage, and filling water for the animals. There was something peaceful about the way he worked. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply doing what needed to be done. Naira admired that. She had grown up among people who respected hard work and honesty. Luke reminded her of the values she had been taught since childhood. While Luke worked, Naira noticed movement near the far edge of the land. For a moment, her breath caught in her throat, but it was only a handful of deer passing through. Still, that brief moment of fear reminded her she was far from home. She closed her eyes for a moment and whispered a small prayer to keep danger away. Luke noticed her unease and walked over to check on her. When she told him what she saw, he listened carefully and scanned the horizon himself. There was nothing harmful in sight, but he understood that her fear came from memory, not just from what she saw. He reassured her softly and returned to work, keeping one eye on the land. Around midday, a wagon approached from the dirt road leading to town. Luke's horse raised its head, sensing something unfamiliar. Luke walked toward the fence, resting one hand on the handle of the small rifle he kept near the barn. As the wagon came closer, Luke recognized the driver, an older man named Samuel Reed, a neighbor who lived several miles away. Samuel greeted Luke with a friendly wave. He came with supplies and news. Luke walked up to meet him, glancing back occasionally to ensure Naira was still safe in her chair. Samuel asked who the woman was, surprised to see an Apache sitting at the ranch. Luke explained only that she had been injured, and he was helping her recover. Samuel warned Luke that there had been trouble near the eastern woods. 3 riders had been causing trouble for travelers, searching camps and shouting questions. They had been seen heading toward this side of the land at sunset yesterday. Luke's eyes darkened at the news. Samuel asked if Luke had seen anything unusual, but Luke simply said he would be careful. After Samuel left, Luke returned to Naira and told her what he learned. Naira looked troubled. She said the riders must be looking for her. She explained more now than before. Naira. The men had spoken about a reward for capturing an Apache woman. She didn't know who put the reward out or why. Maybe someone wanted to use her as leverage against her tribe. Maybe someone simply wanted to harm her people. The thought made her chest tighten. Luke knelt beside her and told her gently that she didn't need to fear. He said again, with full certainty, that he would not let anyone harm her. His calm eyes met hers, and she felt something heavy in her heart grow lighter. She believed him. Whether she wanted to or not, she believed him. The afternoon passed slowly. Luke helped her back inside and made sure she rested her ankle. He brewed tea, using herbs that would ease pain and swelling. Naira thanked him again, and he told her that she shouldn't worry about gratitude. She was under his roof, and it was his duty to keep her safe. As the sun lowered toward the horizon, Naira asked Luke why he was so willing to help a stranger, especially someone from a different people. Luke sat down near her and thought quietly for a moment. He told her that he didn't believe kindness should depend on skin, tribe, or history. He believed in doing what was right, even if it wasn't easy. His father had raised him to protect others, not harm them. And when he found her trapped under the log, something inside him refused to leave her there. It wasn't a choice, just the right thing to do. Naira listened silently. His words touched something deep inside her. She had met many people from the outside world who feared or judged her people. Luke was different. His heart felt genuine. His voice carried truth. And his presence gave her a sense of safety she hadn't expected to ever feel with someone outside her tribe. As the evening settled in, Luke prepared dinner and helped her sit at the small table. They ate together, sharing small pieces of their pasts. Naira told him about her family, her village, the traditions she grew up with. Luke told her about life on the ranch, his mother's gentle wisdom, and the way the land taught him patience. Outside, the sky turned deep orange, then purple as the first stars appeared. Luke lit a small lantern, filling the cabin with soft, warm light. Naira felt calm for the first time since the morning she was chased. She felt safe, not because she had no fear left, but because she wasn't facing her fear alone anymore. Luke noticed her eyes growing heavy and helped her back to the bed. He made sure her ankle was wrapped and comfortable. She murmured that she didn't want to be a burden. Luke shook his head and told her that she wasn't. He said she was under his protection now, and he intended to keep that promise. Naira looked at him quietly for a long second. She didn't say much, but her eyes held gratitude, trust, and something softer that she could not name. She accepted his help. She accepted his promise. And she accepted that her life had crossed paths with his for a reason she didn't yet understand. Luke sat near the window again, keeping watch as night deepened. Outside, the land lay silent. But Luke knew danger could return at any time. And if it did, he was ready. Inside the cabin, Naira rested at last, knowing she wasn't alone. And though she didn't know what tomorrow would bring, she trusted that Luke would stand beside her no matter what storm approached. The next morning arrived with a quiet stillness, the kind that warned Luke something might change soon. The air felt different, heavier somehow. Luke stepped outside early, checking the land before the sun fully rose. He saw no riders, no movement beyond the open fields. But he trusted his instincts. His instincts were telling him to stay alert. Inside the cabin, Naira slowly opened her eyes. Her ankle still hurt, but the swelling had gone down a little. She could move her leg better now, though walking was still impossible. She pushed herself up slightly and looked around the small room. For the first time since her injury, she felt a sense of peace. The soft morning light passed through the window, touching her face with a warm glow. She felt safe here, something she hadn't expected to feel anywhere, outside her own people. Luke returned to the cabin and greeted her softly. He asked about her ankle, and Naira told him it felt better. Luke smiled, glad for the small progress. He helped her sit up and brought her warm water and a small bowl of porridge. Naira thanked him quietly, noticing how he never spoke loudly or moved too fast around her. He treated her gently, respecting her space, showing kindness without asking for anything in return. After breakfast, Luke sat across from her and told her something important. He said he needed to ride to the edge of the property to check for tracks. He did not want to leave her alone, but he also didn't want to risk danger creeping too close without warning. Naira understood, though fear flickered in her chest. She asked him how long he would be gone. Luke said only an hour or two, and he promised to return quickly. Before leaving, Luke made sure she had water, blankets, and a small knife within reach just in case. Not to fight, but for protection, if she felt threatened. He told her to stay inside the cabin, keep the door locked, and listen for his whistle before opening the door for anyone. His voice was calm, but firm, and Naira listened to every word. When Luke mounted his horse and rode away, Naira watched from the window, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and worry. She was not used to depending on another person, especially someone from outside her tribe. Yet Luke had done nothing but protect her since the moment he found her. That truth comforted her more than she expected. Luke rode across the plains, scanning the ground for signs. He found nothing near the creek, nothing near the old oak tree, and nothing near the far fence. But when he reached the wooded area near the east path, he saw hoof prints, fresh ones. 3 horses had ridden through here at dawn. He dismounted and crouched down, studying the dirt. He saw signs of agitation, deep prints where the horses had stopped, turned sharply, and moved again. Whoever these riders were, they were searching for something and growing impatient. Luke felt anger rise in him again. These men would not take Naira. He would not allow that. He mounted his horse and rode back quickly, his jaw set with determination. He had to warn Naira and prepare for what might come. Inside the cabin, Naira sat quietly, trying to distract herself from fear. She touched the beaded bracelet around her wrist, one her mother had given her long ago. It reminded her of home, of safety, of days before trouble. She missed her family, but she knew she could not return until she understood why those men were searching for her. Going back might put her entire village in danger. She heard a noise outside, a soft crunch of footsteps. Her heart raced. She clutched the knife Luke had left for her and waited. Then she heard the sound of a whistle. It was Luke's whistle, exactly as he had promised. She quickly unlocked the door, relief filling her chest. Luke stepped inside and closed the door behind him. His face was calm, but Naira could see tension in his shoulders. She asked him what he found. Luke told her about the fresh tracks, 3 horses, the same number of riders who had chased her. They were close, much closer than before. Naira's breath caught. She asked what they should do. Luke said they would stay inside, stay quiet, and prepare for anything. He did not want to run or hide. This was his land, and he had every right to defend it. But he also knew that a fight would put Naira at risk. He needed a plan, one that kept her safe no matter what these men wanted. By midday, the air grew hotter, and clouds began to gather far in the distance. Luke checked his rifle, making sure it was in good condition. He wasn't a man who sought trouble, but he wasn't afraid to protect what mattered. He reminded Naira that she was safe with him, and that he would not let anyone harm her. Their quiet conversation was interrupted by a distant sound horses. Naira's pulse quickened, and she looked toward the window. Luke moved quickly, closing the shutters and dimming the lantern. He told her to stay behind him, no matter what happened. His voice was serious, but still steady, and that steadiness gave Naira strength. The sound grew louder. Hooves striking dirt. Voices carried by the wind. Luke stood near the door, hand on the rifle, listening carefully. The riders stopped somewhere near the barn. One of them shouted, demanding the owner come out. Luke recognized the tone, not someone asking politely, but someone who believed he had power over others. Luke told Naira to stay hidden. She wanted to argue, but she knew this was not the time. She slipped behind the bed, staying low and quiet. Luke stepped outside, closing the door behind him. 3 men sat on horseback, looking down at him with arrogant eyes. Their clothes were dusty, their faces rough. The leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, asked if Luke had seen an Apache woman nearby. His voice carried a hard edge. Luke kept his expression neutral. He said he had not seen anyone matching their description. The leader stared at him, studying his face for any sign of a lie. Luke did not flinch. The other 2 riders looked around suspiciously, their eyes scanning the land. The leader asked if Luke would mind them checking his property. Luke said yes, he would mind. This was his ranch, and strangers had no right to search it. The leader smirked, amused by Luke's stubbornness. He said they had good reason to believe the woman had come this way. Luke repeated that he had seen no one. The tension rose like a tight rope between them. The men dismounted, clearly not ready to leave. They walked around the barn and the corral, peering into corners. Luke followed them, keeping himself between the cabin and the riders. He could not let them get close to Naira. One of the riders spotted the chair near the porch where Naira had been sitting earlier. His eyes narrowed. He called out to the leader, pointing at it. The leader walked toward the cabin door, suspicion growing on his face. Luke stepped in front of him, blocking the way. The leader towered over him, but Luke did not move aside. The leader asked again if Luke was hiding someone. Luke repeated that he was not. His voice stayed calm, but there was steel beneath it. The leader's eyes darkened. He didn't believe Luke. He reached toward the cabin door. Luke placed his hand firmly on the man's arm, stopping him. The other 2 riders tightened their grips on their weapons. For a moment, everything stood still. Then the leader jerked his arm away and stepped back, looking Luke up and down. He said they would return, and if Luke was lying, there would be consequences. He mounted his horse, the others following. They rode away slowly, sending dust into the air. Luke waited until the sound faded completely before he went back inside the cabin. Naira looked up from behind the bed, her hands trembling. Luke reassured her that the men were gone for now. But they would come back. He knew that, and Naira knew it too. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The danger was real now, closer than ever. Naira felt guilt rise in her chest. She blamed herself for bringing trouble to Luke's home. She said she should leave, that she had no right to endanger him. But Luke stepped closer and shook his head. He told her firmly that she wasn't leaving. He had promised to protect her, and he always kept his promises. Naira's eyes softened, her fear melting into something deeper. She realized Luke was not helping her out of duty alone. He cared, truly cared, and she felt a warmth she had not felt in a long time. Outside, the wind began to rise, and dark clouds gathered above the hills. A storm was approaching, and with it, the riders would soon return. But inside the small cabin, Naira knew she wasn't alone. She trusted Luke now, not just because he protected her, but because he saw her as a person, not a burden. And Luke, watching her with steady eyes, knew he would stand between her and danger for as long as it took. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The storm rolled in slowly over the plains, dark clouds covering the sky like a heavy blanket. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of wet earth and the promise of rain. Luke stood outside for a moment, looking toward the horizon. He could see the first flashes of lightning in the distance, and he knew the storm would reach the ranch soon. But he also knew that this storm could hide danger and that he had to remain alert for Naira's safety. Inside the cabin, Naira sat near the window, watching the sky. The storm frightened her, though she would never admit it out loud. She had faced fear before, but it always came with some control, running, hiding, or defending herself. Now, she felt powerless, but in a different way. The storm reminded her that she was vulnerable, yet she was not alone. Luke had promised to protect her, and that promise gave her courage she had not expected to feel. Luke returned inside just as the first drops of rain began to fall. He closed the shutters and secured the door, making sure the cabin was safe. Naira noticed his movements, calm and confident. Despite the approaching storm, she admired how he carried himself, steady and unshaken. His presence made the cabin feel warmer and safer than it had ever felt. She knew now that she could trust him completely, not only to protect her from strangers, but to help her through the fear that had haunted her since the day she was chased. The rain increased, pattering loudly against the roof. Luke moved to the small hearth and stoked the fire. The warmth spread through the room, and the flickering light made the shadows dance across the walls. Naira moved closer to the fire, feeling comfort in its glow. She was still quiet, but she no longer felt the same tension that had gripped her earlier. She realized that safety was not just about being out of danger, it was about knowing someone cared enough to keep you there. Luke handed her a cup of warm tea. She accepted it with a small smile, their hands brushing briefly. It was a simple moment, but it carried weight for both of them. Naira had learned to be cautious with strangers, and Luke had learned that trust was something that had to be earned. Slowly and carefully. This moment marked a turning point, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. After some time, Luke spoke softly, asking Naira about her family and her life before the chase. She hesitated at first, unsure how much to reveal. But the gentle tone in his voice, the patience he showed, made her open up. She told him about her village, her parents, and the lessons her elders had taught her. She spoke of her people's traditions, their respect for the land, and the importance of courage and honor. Luke listened intently, nodding and asking questions without judgment, showing genuine interest in her story. As she spoke, Naira noticed that Luke never interrupted, never offered opinions unless asked. He simply listened, absorbing her words and understanding their meaning. It was a kind of respect she rarely experienced outside her tribe. She began to feel a deep gratitude for his presence. Realizing that he was more than a protector, he was someone who valued her as a person, not just someone in need of help. Hours passed, and the storm raged outside. The sound of rain on the roof and wind against the walls made the cabin feel like a small sanctuary in the middle of a vast and unpredictable world. Luke suggested they keep busy to pass the time. He showed Naira how to prepare herbs for healing and shared stories of the land and animals on the ranch. She listened, fascinated by the knowledge he carried, learning about the rhythms of life in the plains and the ways of a man who had lived closely with the land for many years. By evening, the rain began to ease, leaving the world outside fresh and shining under the wet light of the setting sun. Luke opened the shutters and looked out. The plains stretched endlessly, glistening from the rain. He stepped outside for a moment, taking in the smell of wet grass and the cool breeze. Naira watched him, feeling a sense of admiration for his steady courage. She realized that she had come to rely not only on his protection, but also on his calm presence, which gave her strength she hadn't known she possessed. As night approached, they prepared a simple dinner. Naira helped Luke gather vegetables from the small garden he tended near the cabin. She found joy in the simple tasks, appreciating the normalcy that life at the ranch offered. It was the first time in weeks that she felt a sense of peace and purpose, even amidst uncertainty. Luke observed her quietly, noticing her gentle movements and the way her eyes brightened when she focused on the work. He was reminded why he had committed to protecting her. She was a person of strength, resilience, and quiet courage. After dinner, Luke suggested they sit by the fire and share more stories. Naira agreed, and they settled near the hearth. She told him about her hopes for the future, her dreams of learning more about the world beyond her village, and the desire to help her people. Luke shared his own hopes and memories of his family, teaching her lessons he had learned about patience, hard work, and the value of standing firm in the face of challenges. Their conversation flowed naturally, creating a bond that neither of them had anticipated but both silently welcomed. Later, as the night grew darker and the wind whispered through the trees, Naira confided her fears about the riders who had chased her. She admitted she worried they might return, that danger might not be over. Luke reassured her, speaking with calm certainty. He told her that no matter what came, he would stand between her and any threat. His words were not empty promises. They carried the weight of a man who had lived a life of responsibility and honor. Naira felt her anxiety lessen, replaced by a cautious hope. Time passed, and Naira began to trust Luke fully, not just because of his actions, but because of his consistent integrity. She realized that her life had changed irrevocably. She had come to the ranch frightened and alone, but now she felt supported, respected, and valued. She understood that safety and trust were not just about protection from danger but also about being seen and understood by someone who truly cared. As the night deepened, Luke and Naira prepared for rest. He helped her to a comfortable spot near the fire, ensuring her ankle was well supported. She settled in, feeling the warmth and security of the cabin. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of belonging, a feeling she had not expected to experience outside her own village. Luke stayed nearby, keeping watch, but also allowing her space to rest and recover. In the quiet moments before sleep, Naira reflected on the events of the past days. She had faced fear, pain, and uncertainty, yet she had also discovered trust, kindness, and courage in ways she never imagined. Luke had become more than a protector. He had become a constant presence, someone who gave her strength simply by being near. She accepted this change in her life, understanding that her future was now intertwined with his, and she felt a quiet gratitude for the way fate had brought them together. Outside, the plains lay calm under the night sky, and the wind carried the faint scent of rain-soaked earth. Luke remained vigilant, knowing that life could bring unexpected challenges at any moment. But he also knew that within the small cabin, a bond had formed, one of trust, respect, and the quiet understanding that they were no longer facing the world alone. As sleep began to take her, Naira whispered softly, more to herself than to anyone else, that she was no longer afraid. She had accepted the truth of her situation, the presence of Luke in her life, and the possibility of hope even in uncertain times. And in that quiet acknowledgement, a sense of peace settled over her heart. Luke watched over her, a steady guardian in the night, aware of the promise he had made and determined to keep it. He knew that the path ahead would hold challenges, but he also knew that together they could face whatever came. The bond between them, forged in moments of fear, courage, and trust, had become unbreakable. By the first light of dawn, the storm had passed entirely. The world outside was fresh, alive, and full of possibilities. Luke and Naira had survived the immediate danger and had grown stronger because of it. They looked toward the future with a quiet understanding that life had changed forever for both of them. and though challenges might arise again, they knew they would face them side by side. In that small cabin on the plains, under the vast sky, a new chapter began. Naira had found safety, trust, and courage. Luke had found purpose, responsibility, and a quiet connection that he hadn't known he needed. Together, they faced the world with steady hearts, ready for whatever the future might hold. The ranch, once quiet and routine, had become a place of growth, healing, and understanding. Naira's acceptance of Luke's protection had opened the door to trust and friendship, and perhaps, in time, something deeper. But for now, they were content simply to be together, learning from each other and finding strength in the bond that had formed under the shadow of fear, hardship, and the promise of protection. And so, as the sun rose again over the plains, the world seemed brighter, calmer, and full of hope. Naira and Luke faced the new day. Not as strangers, not as protector and protected, but as companions bound by trust, courage, and the quiet understanding that life was richer when shared.